just fine. I answer to that.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so if there are no other changes to the agenda, all in favor of approving the agenda with the additions? And that carries. Again, if there's anyone who needs to declare pecuniary interest now in terms of what we'll be discussing today or throughout the meeting, please do so. Approval of the minutes of the previous meetings. Did everyone get a chance to read over the last set of minutes? I think I had asked Brittany to make a change on that. Yeah, go ahead, Brittany.
Thank you. Yes, you did ask me to make a minor amendment to the minutes, which I have. The first draft of the minutes reflected addition of a 2021 budget item for the Township Council to consider regarding, and Kathy, you can interrupt me if I'm remembering incorrectly, but I was to reach out to the Township of Huron-Kinloss to determine how much it had costed them to complete their climate action work plan, not their energy audit. So the minutes had reflected that I was to inquire about an energy audit rather than the climate work plan, which I have made that change.
Thank you. And does that, I guess we'll talk about that when we talk about the work plan, Brittany, in terms of the costing, because I think that's getting this forward as a potential budget item for council to consider for 2021, I think needs to be at the top of our minds at this point in time. Oh, hey, I should have said welcome to our new CAO, Mr. Meneses. I'm sorry, CAO Meneses. I should have given you the opportunity to introduce yourself to everyone. You go ahead.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Al, and joined the municipality, I guess, December 14th, so not about 3 weeks right now. Excited to be here. Excited that there's actually some action going on with climate. I think this is an important initiative. I think it's something that we owe to the future generations and making sure that we're doing everything we can. So excited to be part of this, and very excited to hear what everyone's thinking.
Excellent. Well, I think I speak on behalf of everyone. We're happy to have you at this committee, especially with your experience, Al, with climate change in your previous positions. Yeah, so back to approving the minutes. So Brittany, thank you for making that one change regarding the costing that Huron-Kinloss was putting forth for their climate action plan. Are there any other revisions to the minutes that anyone would like to bring forward at this time? Anne?
Just a little bit of an addition to 11.2. We had discussed that because there's so much reading in this committee that people could circulate articles in between agenda packages going out, as long as we always copied Brittany so she could include them in the agenda package.
Right. Yeah. So do you want the minutes to reflect that as well then, Anne?
I want our brains to reflect that. So whether it needs to be written, then write it. But it was just a reminder
Yes.
that we had agreed to do that.
Right. And I think maybe we discussed that possibly even after the fact. So I think the minutes are probably okay as is. Brittany?
Thank you, and I am happy to facilitate that request. As we discussed at our last meeting, the only asterisk I would place on it is I have to receive the articles prior to finalization of the agenda in order to include said articles in the agenda. So I know at our last meeting, we decided we needed more time to review agendas. So I am dedicated to doing so and ensuring you have your materials a week prior. You'll have to forgive me due to holidays. It was a little bit delayed this time, but I do intend to make it a priority to have your materials to you sooner rather than later. So if you could have any materials to myself prior to 1 week prior to each meeting, then I will ensure that that material is included in the agenda for you guys.
Sounds good. Thank you. Perfect. Okay, so if we're okay with the minutes as they appear to us at this point in time, is everyone in favor of that, approving those? Okay. Brittany. Oh,
Sorry, thank you. If I could just ask members Anderson and Gray to please enable their video feeds for purposes of vote taking. If you're having difficulties, please indicate your vote verbally so we know you are either for or against each motion as called by the chair.
okay. Perfect.
So I'm sorry, Brittany, so my video's not on right now?
Now it is.
Yeah, you're good, Bob. And John as
Okay,
well.
all right.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Moving on to item number 5, we have no presentations. And number 6, we have a delegation. So Hiba Hussein with the County of Gray is with us to talk about the county's climate action plan. Welcome, Hiba. It's always good to see your face and to hear from you. And I will turn the floor over to you.
Yeah, it's awesome being here. Good morning. Can everyone hear me? That's awesome. I know many of you from my work and with the community, so it's really nice to see a lot of you again. I do apologize. My internet is going in and out. I'm working with 2 other people who are also doing work from home, so we're sharing resources right now, so it might be a little bit wonky, so I do apologize in advance for that. I'm just quickly going to do a quick presentation, so I'm going to share my screen here with you. But I guess before I do that, let me introduce myself a little bit more formally. So my name is Hiba Hussein. I am a planner at Gray County. I started about 3 years ago, and I have a master's of planning from the University of Toronto. My interest has always been in environmental related issues and climate change, so that's kind of how I started off on this project. I've been the lead on this project since the very beginning, so I've done the background research and a literature scan right at the beginning when I started, and then when we went out to do our RFP, and kind of I've been working with the consultant who is ICLEI Canada since 2019 to help develop this project. So we're in this project has definitely gone through several stages and has kind of evolved over the last 3 years, especially with COVID. But I think we've been doing a lot of good work at the county, so I'm happy to be here and present on some of that work. The presentation that I'm going to provide is probably very similar to what some of you have already seen, especially if you attended the Healthy Communities Partnership conference. This is a very similar presentation that I gave there, but I didn't know what the level of who was on this committee and kind of what level of involvement of people I've had with the Gray County plan. So I'm gonna give this brief overview, and then if there's any very specific questions to any aspect that I mentioned, please do let me know. The Gray County Climate Change Action Plan. So the intent of this plan was to kind of, it started with County Council, and our intent was to find a plan that brought together multiple policies that the county currently has. So we address climate change in indirect ways at the county through multiple policies, and County Council realizing that climate change is becoming more of an issue within not only global politics but within our local politics as well, realized that we needed a local plan that kind of guide sustainable communities and kind of had identified those gaps that existed in our policy frameworks and in areas where we don't address climate change. So this plan is really focused on bringing in together multiple policies, but also identifying, like I mentioned, those gaps and bringing and filling in those gaps. Our goal with this plan is to have a very goal-oriented, strategy-focused plan. So the policy will really identify areas that are areas in which we can advance sustainable practices, areas in which we can reduce our emissions, and ultimately the goal of the plan is to bring together multiple ideas and perspectives and priorities around climate change from various communities and municipalities. Gray is very different, especially since we have 9 municipalities, and it looks very, climate change looks very different across our municipalities. So it's very important to us to bring in all those perspectives and priorities into this plan. So this is a graph that was taken from the region of Waterloo's climate change action plan, and this essentially kind of highlights what adaptation and mitigation is. And I usually like to do point this graph out because people tend to really not understand sometimes the difference between these two terms, and highlight that while there are a lot of policies that can address both, they are a little bit different. The Grey County Climate Change Action Plan is going to be a mitigation focused first plan. So our focus is really to address the areas and where emissions are being created, and really address those. Our hope and our goal is with working with municipalities is that they will then take the resources, the information, the data that the county has collected through our work and do an adaptation plan. We think that this process will work well because in adaptation plans, you really need to have more operational control over the resources or the infrastructure that you are impacting, because you're really adapting your infrastructure to the local environment. And in Gray, many of our infrastructure that we're looking to influence is owned by local municipalities. So we think assets, our local municipalities can play a great role in really having an adaptation plan that really adapts their infrastructure and their communities to climate change. As part of this work, we did 2 types of inventories. We did a community inventory and we did a corporate inventory. So the corporate inventory looks at our corporate assets. So it really looks at everything that Grey County owns, from buildings to fleets to street lights, and really looks at what are the emissions that are coming out of those corporate owned assets, and then looks at how we can reduce our emissions through those changes in practices and in our corporate assets, with our corporate assets. In the community inventory, we look at GHG emissions that are produced from key sectors and activities within the community. I'm going to go more deeply into the community inventory because that's the one that would be of interest to this committee. But essentially, we're looking at any emissions that are created within the community, which could include transportation, energy, agriculture, really looking at the key sectors of that make up our community and how they're contributing to sustainability in our area. So our community baseline, so as I mentioned, we a part of this work really was to focus on tracking what our emissions is, really understanding where our emissions are being produced. So the consultant that we picked, ICLEI Canada, as I mentioned, did a baseline analysis, and the year that they chose to do that baseline analysis for is 2018. That was the year that we had that was the only year we had really good data. Any data before that or after that was either not relevant anymore or wasn't. We had data gaps. So we chose 2018 as our baseline. And what we tracked was our stationary energy use, and we looked at energy use within residential, commercial, institutional, industrial, and fugitive emissions, which is just emissions created by energy sources. And then transportation was personal vehicle use, public transit, and off-road. Our waste was solid waste and wastewater. Waste is one that is an asset that currently is utilized or is managed by our local municipality. So this was all data that we collected from our local municipalities. And in agriculture, we really just focused on livestock emissions, as that was the only area in which we really had good data from the province. Our findings include that because Grey County is such a large rural-based economy, and it's one of the biggest sectors in our region. Agriculture is the biggest emitter in our area, but that's not again, that's not out of the ordinary for a region that is so heavily based in agricultural activities. So we found that 47% of our emissions are from agriculture. Our off-road transportation included 23%. Our residential and commercial emissions included about 20%. And then our solid waste was about 6%. So emissions by sector included about 23 in energy, transportation was 24, waste was 6, and agriculture was 47. How does Grey County compare? So this is looking at the Kawartha Lakes Environmental Plan, and as you can see, it really does depend on kind of what the main sector is in that community. So for Kawartha Lakes, transportation, residential, and commercial, the stationary energy and the transportation part of their emissions was a lot higher than ours, primarily because they do have more settlement areas, more built up primary settlement areas. So while livestock was still a large majority of their emissions, it wasn't a big factor as it is in the Grey County plan. In comparing to Peterborough, we see kind of a similar story as the one to Kawartha Lakes, where transportation and residential areas emissions make up more than the ag portion, just because they are more of a settlement, more of a built-up urban area. So our themes in our climate change plan, focusing on the community aspect, is we've chosen these 6 themes. As of recently, we've added a 7th theme to the plan, which includes waterways and floodlines. From our engagement with the community over the last 6-7 months, it was made very clear to us that water is a key issue, especially being so close to Georgian Bay. One of the reasons why we initially didn't include water in our themes was because water is typically included in adaptation plans. It's typically, there's a different methodology used to assess water, and how the impacts of water is looked at differently, and is usually often looked at through an adaptation plan. In recognizing that, we still wanted to include policies in our water, include policies in the plan regarding water. We haven't developed those policies yet, so I'm not going to speak too much on that, but I just wanted to make members of this committee aware that water will be another theme that we have included in as part of this community section of the plan. So the first area is buildings, and many of you will be aware of this already. I've presented on some of this, but we are hoping to have more detailed strategies released in the next coming weeks. We are in the process of developing that, and we're going to take that to our climate change task force at the county, and then once that is presented to them, we can release that to the public. But just in terms of a brief overall, our building section of our plan will focus on essentially areas in where we can retrofit our current buildings and provide programming so that members of our community, especially small businesses, homeowners, can capitalize on retrofit programs. There's many retrofit programs that currently exist already, especially that are provided by private organizations such as Enbridge. So we want to help educate members of our community on those programs that already exist, but also look at maybe developing programs internally that help businesses, whether they're commercial, industrial, or even residential dwellings, capitalize on retrofit programs that can help them become more sustainable. We, as part of our plan for future development, we want to encourage that any future development, whether it be commercial or residential, they build high efficiency, and this is really focusing on making sure that our developers are aware of new technologies that are occurring within the green infrastructure world, and really capitalizing that and building that and taking that and building that into their proposals. We part of every section or every theme of our plan, we've included awareness and education portion. We've been told multiple times that education and awareness is a huge component of climate change, making people understand the impacts of sustainability and the impacts of climate change on our environment. So we have included education on each section or each theme of our plan. So really just making sure that people are aware of kind of a new infrastructure that or new technologies that are being developed, and how they can make their buildings or homes more efficient. And then support businesses in our commercial businesses as they try to become more sustainable. So if there are practices that our business community wants to implement as part of sustainability or becoming more efficient, energy efficient, we want to support that. So providing potential financial resources, it will be potential priority for us. In terms of transportation, we're going to focus on supporting the adoption of electric vehicles and low emission vehicles. So electric vehicles have become a huge portion and have really taken over the market over the last decade or two, and have really exploded. The technology has really advanced over the last decade or two. So we really want to make sure that Gray is capitalizing on that, and especially capitalizing on the changes in consumer habits. So our priority is to make sure that the infrastructure that is needed to support this change exists within our community. So really making sure that EV charging stations exist across the county. They're more accessible, and people really know where they are. And we've been working with, there's a regional group that's been created by Huron County, and it has Bruce and Dufferin County, and we're really focusing on identifying within these 4 counties areas where we can put in more charging stations, and really kind of build up that asset. We, as part of this, we also want to promote safe, active transportation. So really, this complements the work that we're doing around our cycling trails master plan, and that master plan really focuses on connecting our cycling routes across the county and developing more bike lanes in areas where we see cycling becoming more of a more popular. So we want to ensure that we are connecting with that, promoting that, but also helping our municipalities with and promoting other active transportation methods such as walking, or and really ensuring that those are complementing our streets currently. We want to reduce single occupancy vehicle trips. So really, again, this focuses on the education aspects, so helping people recognize how single occupancy vehicle trips can affect the climate, and really create a kind of awareness campaign around on car sharing and multiple users, driving together versus one person in a car. In terms of waste, our primary focus here is to work with our municipalities, as they are the primary owner of the assets. So really working on awareness and education, and then kind of working on waste diversion programs with the municipality. So I know the municipality of Meaford is working on a styrofoam sorry, I'm losing the term here, but essentially they're working on a policy that diverts styrofoam from the landfills, and they've been working with a private company to kind of manage their styrofoam waste. So the county's been working with them to help develop that policy. So if there are ways in which we can focus in and kind of help waste diversion, we really want to focus in on that. We want to help potentially start work with municipalities to start organic collections programs and see if there are ways that that we can provide supports to those programs, or even work with residential owners themselves to see if we can provide them with resources to do composting at home. Sorry, go ahead, Brittany.
I didn't mean to interrupt, Hiba, but I wonder if, could I ask a question at this point in time, or would you rather I leave it till a little later?
It's up to you.
So it falls under this particular topic. As you know, in Georgian Bluffs, we have the biodigester. And at this point in time, we're considering whether we should be upgrading it to handle source separated organics. My question for you at the county level is, has that been discussed as a regional resource, or where does the county stand currently with that particular facility?
Yeah, so it's come up at county council previously, and it's been of interest to some municipalities to potentially regionalize this aspect of waste collection, or even just waste collection overall. It's something that the county is doing further research on. We want to first do the background research and kind of understand the economics of it, so what makes sense before we provide a suggestion. So it's something where the CAO is aware of, and we've made it a priority in 2021 to do some more research and kind of do some background understanding on the topic, and then bring that back to county council, as it's been a suggestion that they've been looking for as well.
Thank you.
So in terms of energy, we just want to focus on development of community renewable energy projects, and this kind of feeds into the kind of awareness and education campaign. So the county's been working with organizations such as Enbridge to highlight some of the programs that they have for residential and commercial buildings, and bring that into and make residents aware of that. There's a lot of innovative stuff that Enbridge is doing that we want to make sure that people are capitalizing on. So it's really just bringing, it's not necessarily developing programs internally, but helping connect residents to the programs that already exist. We want to identify district energy systems, really identify where energy is coming from right now, and how we can make that, expand that system, and really make sure that we're addressing kind of gaps in our energy systems where people might not be able to access affordable energy, and make sure that we aren't creating equity issues and related to our energy in the county. And then we want to identify local community energy resources, such as, so this is really focusing on finding alternative energy uses. So it includes waste heat, agricultural waste, solid waste, and wastewater. So if there are technologies or advancements in this aspect of community energy, then we want to kind of capitalize on that. And I just want to point that we want to also make sure that it's not included in here, but we want to expand our solar and wind energy resources that exist. So really include that into our official plans, and make sure that if there is development of a sustainable energy happening, we want to prioritize that and get that within our communities. In terms of land use, we want to just focus on integrating climate change considerations into infrastructure planning, and then really focus on making sure that we're updating our local plans and other planning tools to encourage high density development, and kind of really making sure that you know, our settlement areas are our primary areas of growth, and then preserving our natural heritage so that we aren't building into on our resources such as our wetlands and our significant woodlands. We want to really make sure that we're preserving those heritage systems that really support a lot of the environmental emissions work that's happening. We also want to preserve our local agricultural and environmental lands. So really making sure that our ag lands aren't being taken out of agriculture or being taken up for development. So strengthening those policies to make sure that they're preserved is also a priority. And then just finally focusing to make sure that we're really creating new green spaces and community gardens, and making sure that we are focusing on putting in green spaces within our urban areas, so that we aren't, you know, losing that within our urban spaces. In terms of agriculture, we want to really provide opportunities in terms to educate farmers about best practices within the agriculture. There's been a lot of work that's been done by Alice and Grey Bruce, Federation of Agriculture, about sustainable practices within the ag community, and we really want to connect farmers to that that work that's being done by local groups. So it's really about learning from what other farmers and other ag organizations are doing, and then connecting them to that. And really our primary focus in the ag section is to really bring awareness and educate farmers about practices that are occurring, and so that they can adapt that on their farms. Our program areas, as I mentioned, is just to focus on developing a climate lens. That's our priority. So we want to make sure that any policy that's created is focused and has a climate lens. So any decisions that are made at the local or municipal or at the county level is looked at through a climate perspective. We want to provide opportunities for local renewable energy, so really updating our policies to focus on sustainable energy, such as solar. We want to increase energy efficiency in our municipal and county buildings, and make sure that we are putting in you know, new technologies and retrofitting our buildings so that they're the most efficient. We want to design our roadways so that they are safe and accessible, and they can allow for multiple users year-round. So really focusing on having active transportation on all of our road systems will be a priority, especially on county roads. We want to expand our local transit options. So this is in coordination with developing our current public transport system at the county, but focusing on developing a transit master plan and encouraging active transportation. So that's going to be the focus of the work that already has occurred in terms of the cycling trails master plan and the public transportation system that we just put in. We want to build on that and develop a transit master plan. We want to support the use of more zero or low emissions vehicles. Again, this just really focusing on making sure that the infrastructure exists for vehicles that are electric, and making sure that people are able to buy these vehicles and not have to worry whether that infrastructure exists within the county. We want to expand initiatives to divert waste from landfills. So really, again, just focusing on policies that help or programs that help divert waste from landfills, whether it be something as small as styrofoam or whether it be organics. We really want to try to take as much as what we're sending into the landfill out of the landfill. And then finally, just preserving natural areas and significant environmental features. So our focus here is to encourage municipalities to develop tree management bylaws. The county currently has a forest management bylaw, and that focuses on just on county-owned properties. But we really want to encourage municipalities to do the same. That way, there is preservation at both levels and on municipal-owned properties. So that's the end of my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions if you have any.
Any questions for Hiba? Danuta?
Here we go. I'm used to Zoom, finding all of these little icons. Where are they? I'm trying to think how to frame this as a question, Hiba. By the way, I really appreciate how you've laid that out, and I'm really happy to see the climate lens up there as a good starting point. And the importance of looking at the agricultural practices is obviously they're a huge emitter in our area. What confuses me a little bit is we talk about transportation, but it includes not only the people's need to get places, but it's all kind of mixed up with recreation in a way to me. And I'm wondering if you've looked at those two headings and how they don't really blend to me. Does that work as a question? Can you comment?
Yeah, it's unfortunate. The data that we received from the province, it wasn't broken down by travel, where people are traveling to. So they didn't tell us whether people are traveling to work or to for recreational use. So we really couldn't disseminate that data to that level. So unfortunately, just because of the data gap, it includes all of that. But really, we hope that the Cycling Trails Master Plan addresses more of the recreational portion of the plan of transportation use. But we hope that cycling becomes a mode of transportation for people going to work. So really, we want to kind of incorporate. We don't want to. Our policy hopes to incorporate both of that into it versus trying to separate the two, because whether people are driving to work or kind of using their car to get to a park, we want to make sure that we're just trying to take the car out of the equation. And the purpose necessarily doesn't really come in here.
And I have one more question. I noticed that reducing is not a big factor in the waste concept. It's all about diversion. And of course that comes under your community awareness and so on. But I just think seeing the word there is important because it's number one at the start of making changes in our lifestyles.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and definitely not something that I thought of or the consultant thought of. So yeah, I think that's a really good point. Our priority now is to kind of maintain the level of waste that we're producing, so not increase it. So our priority was to just divert the level that we're producing, but we really didn't focus on kind of putting in wording around reduction or personal responsibility in terms of waste creation.
Yeah, I had the same thought. So thank you, Danuta. When you talk about the 3 R's, we've kind of had to evolve past the recycle notion because we have warehouses full of plastic that nobody can figure out what to do with. So reduction, I think, is absolutely key. John.
Like Danuta, still getting used to Teams. Well, thanks again for joining us this morning and giving us some of your valuable time. I have 2 questions. Right at the beginning of your talk, you said that climate change looked different across the 9 municipalities in Grey County. And can you tell us how you identified it looks different?
So it kind of really just focuses on our primary settlement area. So we have municipalities such as Owen Sound, the town of Blue Mountains, Hanover, that have a different set of priorities and the landscape looks very different than, you know, municipalities such as Chatsworth or West Grey. So it's really just kind of, you know, the town of Blue Mountains is primarily the sector that supports them is the tourism sector. So policies that we create for them are going to look very different. When in speaking to RTO 7, they were saying that, you know, a natural resource in Blue Mountains, such as the ski hills or water, is so vital to their economy. So we can't stop businesses from utilizing those resources, but how can we utilize those resources in a more sustainable manner? The other factor that impacts Blue Mountains is tourism. So people coming in, driving in from in different parts of the GTHA into the town. So how do we reduce you know, the impact of the car coming into the town? So that's some of the areas that kind of differ in terms of Blue Mountains versus if you look at a township like Chatsworth, where they don't have any settlement area. They're primarily an ag economy. So how can we support the farmers in our ag sector there to become more sustainable, and really focusing on areas such as that. So it's really just looking at the individual economies of each of our municipalities and kind of what drives that, and then focusing on that.
Okay, that's clear. Then my second question is, to what extent does the climate plan that Gray is putting in place, will it actually work for the lower tier municipalities, versus to what extent those municipalities need to actually develop their own climate action plans themselves?
I think it really kind of, the success of this plan really depends on how interested municipalities are in working with the county. I think ultimately, if there is support at the municipal level, then we can work together to really accomplish that. I think municipalities absolutely would need to develop their own plans that focuses on their priorities. So we've identified multiple priorities in our plan, especially looking at the fact that we are looking at 9 municipalities in the region or the county, and it's so different across the county. So Georgian Bluffs will have very different priorities from the town of Blue Mountains or Owen Sound or any of our municipalities. So really focusing on what the assets that Georgian Bluffs owns and kind of where they want to focus in. So our message to the municipalities has been focus on adaptation and then focus on the assets that you own that you want
to. So I'm super happy, Hiba, to hear you say that absolutely the municipalities need to develop their own plan, because I have heard some around the council table say, the county's looking after it, let's just wait and let them do the work for us. And clearly we know that's not going to be the most effective approach. Oh gosh, there was one other thing you said there at the end that I picked up on, and now it's completely gone. So let's go to Luke.
Thanks, Hiba. I hadn't seen the presentation, so very, very nice and very useful, and yeah, wonderful. 2 questions. One builds on the discussion we just had, started by John. But the first question is about the baseline, and you had that based on a county level, especially from a community inventory perspective. My question is it also possible to sort it out per municipality, so that the municipality actually has their own baseline based on the work that you have done? And then the second question follows on that, on the discussion John started. You've done a lot of work, great ideas, great programs. My question as the committee of the municipality, how can we leverage that work that you did in very practical terms? If you say we're willing to work with the municipalities, what does it actually mean in practice? Because there's a lot of support, there's a lot of, you're sitting on a boatload of information, awareness, you have done so much thinking. I'm just thinking about how do we then operationalize this and really put that in practice, and basically what are the roles and responsibilities between the county and the municipalities? You probably have been asked this question 1,000 times, but I think it's still useful to hear for this meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think the baseline for the municipalities, I think it's valuable to do one yourselves. A lot of the data we have is it's available. We do have data that looks at the municipal level that couldn't be broken down at the municipal level, but some of it can't be. So we can provide that data to you, but it might still, there might be some areas in which we don't have municipal, just, you know, Georgian Bluff specific data. So there might be some data gaps there, but really I think doing an inventory at the municipal level can benefit yourselves, because it could give you a clearer understanding of where the emissions are. I don't think it's going to be much different than what the county has found, but it can be a little bit more targeted and a little bit more focused. So I don't think there's any harm in doing it, and we can provide you with the data that we do have for the municipality. In terms of your question, if I can, I would want to throw that back to you a little bit and say, what do you need from us? I've been really trying to get an answer to that from municipalities over the last couple of months, really trying to understand what municipalities need from the county to support this work. Some of the ideas that we've heard is that really the county needs to be a facilitator in these conversations, and the county needs to create a committee across municipalities to kind of that brings everyone together at the same table, and so that we're not all doing our own thing. So it was mentioned by the public works manager at one of our municipalities that if we can bring together all the public works managers and the county can lead that conversation, then one public works manager isn't doing something different and counterproductive to then their neighboring municipality, and really kind of facilitate that cross boundary work. So if two municipalities can work together to maybe do a waste diversion program, then the county can facilitate that and be part of that conversation. But that's one area that we've identified. Again, we want part of our plan is to really develop some programs, and either for the retrofit programs, waste diversion programs. So really providing that at the county level for all of our municipalities. So if those are some of the ideas that we have found right now. But if there are other areas that you think you need support, please let me know, and we want to try to provide that for you.
So thanks, that's useful. But just to follow up on that, very practically speaking, if you talk about these waste diversion programs, for example, or education programs or the charging stations, are these programs that the county is going to implement, or is the county supporting the municipalities to implement such programs? Especially where like the charging stations involves multiple counties. So I'm just trying to see, what is it, where do you provide a supporting role, where do you provide an implementing role?
It really depends on what the program is, right? So some infrastructure the county doesn't own, so we can't influence. So, for example, we don't own any of the waste infrastructure in the county, so that's a municipal asset. So we would provide support in that sense. But for charging stations, we would take the lead, because that's an asset that we can do regionally in partnerships with other counties. So there isn't, it's specific to the program, it's specific to the asset, and really, I think, yeah, it depends. I'm sorry, that's not a very clear answer, but.
So, and then I'll one follow-up question, and that will stop. But so, if we think about developing an action plan, would the natural entry point be to first focus on initiatives that have already been committed to by the county? So there's a leading role, like you say, and to see how the municipality can build off on that. So that basically the county takes the leading role. There is a consistency, there is sustainability. It is basically low-hanging fruit. Is that the approach that other municipalities have taken in terms of how they start the implementation of their plans?
For sure, yeah. So this is why our plan touches on so many themes, is because each theme will be more, will kind of touch to the priorities of each municipality. So as I mentioned, because we're so diverse, some will be more impactful than others. So I would say focus in on a couple of themes, and then really in that theme, look at the assets that you own and that you can influence, and then kind of, and that you can change. And that would be my plan, would be there are. So that would be how I would approach it. But again, each municipality is different.
Yeah, just to follow up on a couple of those notions as well, Hiba. Like, I'm wondering if there are more cost-effective ways of doing other things, even like hiring a company or a consultant to do our climate action plan. Like, surely there are ways of us working together within the county to secure that kind of consultant at a reduced rate without, doing a lot of replication of work. And I just wonder if there are efficiencies, even with something as specific as hiring someone to do that plan. So that's my first comment. My second one is, you mentioned earlier that municipalities should focus on adaptation, and yet FCM and many of the other experts and resources available say that's not good enough, that we have to talk about adaptation for sure, but we also have to include mitigation in our plans. So I wonder if I misunderstood you. I just wonder if you could clarify that.
Each plan touches on both, so I don't think you can really necessarily create a plan that doesn't have some form of mitigation and adaptation policies in it. Ideally, what you would want is policies that address both. But yeah, it's just where your priority is. So the priority of the plan will be adaptation. You'll have mitigation policies in there, but the priority should be to adapting infrastructure and in your communities to climate change, just because you are the closest to, you're the local closest government to those resources and you own the infrastructure. So it's really more about adaptation. To me, I think you have to speak to both, but your priority should be adaptation.
Okay.
That's our recommendation as the upper tier that's doing primarily a mitigation focused plan that does address adaptation, but we are really looking at the mitigation portion of the plan of the scenario, and then you would look at the adaptation plan, and that's kind of where the collaboration would come in, that our two plans would complement each other, because they look at two different aspects of climate change, and then they come together and then really influence that. So that's kind of where we were, that's kind of the mindset that we went in with this.
Got it. I guess, so when we talk about, for example, making our municipal buildings more energy efficient, we're adapting them to make them more energy efficient, but to me that's mitigation, because if we're reducing, adaptation to me means how do we secure our shorelines to prevent erosion, and knowing that's going to happen anyway. To me, that's adaptation, whereas anything that reduces emissions is going to be mitigation. So I'm new at this. I may be interpreting it incorrectly, but I'm trying to decide, adapting a building might actually fall under mitigation.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. And again, this goes to the point that I think policies that touch on both will be important. Yeah, for sure. So adapting our buildings to be more efficient is an adaptation plan. That was one of the areas that were identified primarily for our corporate buildings, but we also wanted to make sure that was available, programs were available for residential and commercial buildings as well. So that's an area, because of the emissions and the levels of how high they are within the county. We wanted to make sure that we had policies policies in place to make sure that our current building stock, which is a much older building stock, has the ability to be access those retrofit programs and kind of capitalize on some of those technologies. So yeah, you're correct. And again, I think this goes to my point that both policies should be included in plans.
Got it. Thank you, Hiba. And has there been talk about hiring consultants to do this work for us and developing plans and working more collaboratively with our neighbors? And are there cost efficiencies to be realized if we did that? Even just being able to get the right company that we know has worked well for others. I know we still have to send out requests for tenders, but what's been done to help coordinate and sort of facilitate that process at the county level?
So there has been conversations very briefly about potentially including in the plan, including wording around having a climate change position created at the county level, so that that person can focus fully on climate change and making sure that they are a resource to the municipalities and facilitate some of that work of implementation. Right now, there hasn't been any talks or any conversations. Nobody's really brought up the point of having a consultant for our municipality. So that's something that I've written down as a potential conversation piece that we can have internally here, but there hasn't been a lot of conversation. I think a lot of our municipalities are hiring consultants and just doing that work themselves. So I know the town of Blue Mountains has a consultant. I know Owen Sound has gotten a grant from FCM to do stormwater management adaptation plan. So right now they're all doing individual plans through either through grant or through hiring a consultant.
Okay, thank you. Al.
Thank you very much, Hiba. Great overview, and I think a lot of the previous questions took a lot of my thunder away. But I think we're all on the same direction here and on the same page in terms of there's a desire to have a little bit of synergy, if possible, between the upper tier and the lower tier governments. There surely will be some synergies to be had and some cost efficiencies to be gained by working together. And I'm new to this in terms of what we're at in Georgian Bluffs, but I will tell you my experience is that traditionally the higher tier municipality, in this case the county, would develop sort of that umbrella sort of framework, that roadmap, and then each one of the lower tier municipalities would have their pillars supporting the overall goal. I will say that, you know, in the past, these are not initiatives that are cheap. They're not initiatives that come without a cost. So there's going to be a lot of priorities and a lot of sort of decisions that council is going to have to make in terms of costs associated with this. I think we have to go down this path. I think we'd be crazy not to, but we have to be innovative as well. Like accessing grants is one thing. Looking at self-funded options is another. We did that in another municipality that I was at, and when we retrofitted some buildings, we didn't actually reduce the budget. What we did was we channeled all of those savings into a reserve fund, and then we accessed that reserve to fund other projects, to retrofit other facilities and do other things. So we weren't always going back to the taxpayer and asking for additional funding. So there's a lot of sort of creative mechanisms that we can come up with to share the costs and not necessarily tax the taxpayer year in and year out to get some of these retrofits and some of these things done. But I'm also going to caution that anything with climate is really like an onion, and there's a lot of layers within here. And it's not as simple as saying, okay, Georgian Bluffs, we've got a 60-year-old facility in you know, name it, and let's start retrofitting that. We need to look first whether that is going to be an asset that we're going to keep in our inventory long term, whether it makes any sense to spend any money to retrofit it when we don't know what the future of that facility is going to be. If it's only utilized 10% of the time, does that make the most sense for us to look at putting some money into that facility? So there's a lot of layers to this. And if we're going to be successful in doing this, we need to come to council with a comprehensive plan and it's going to be a long-term plan of how it's going to work and how we're going to fund that under the umbrella of here's what the county has put together, and we're going to support that, and we're going to develop our own initiatives in support of that. And then we have to have sort of joint funding opportunities, as Councillor Coburn said. I mean, surely to God, you know, these consultants, everyone's hiring their own consultants. They're paying 50 or 100 grand to hire a consultant, and that consultant simply changes the template on the top. Instead of Blue Mountains, today it's Georgian Bluffs. It's the same recommendations. It's the same type of things. And it's just cost prohibitive for municipalities. We have to look for opportunities to get together. I will tell you that prior to this meeting this morning, we had a joint CAOs meeting, and this topic did come up. We talked about climate action and how we are going to be committed to working together to come to something, an understanding between all of our area municipalities and the county, so that we can bring some recommendations forward to all of our councils where we're all on the same page and we're all supporting each other and we're all looking for efficiencies to be had. But this isn't a project that sits on the side of someone's desk. You know, this is a project that you need dedicated resources. You need people who really know their stuff so that we can get some traction done on this. And we're not going to overpromise and underdeliver. So I'm glad to see we're going in this direction, and I'm happy that we're doing it, but we just need to be very strategic in how we're going to move this forward. And we have to make sure that we're going to be doing or making recommendations that are doable. It's not just a wish list. It isn't something that says, you know, by 2030 we're going to reduce our emissions by 50%, and then a few years later we're standing around the table saying, why haven't we done it, or where's the money to do it? Because there's a cost associated with it. There's a cost if we don't do anything, but there's also a cost to do something, and we just need to put that in the context of all the priorities that we have as a community. I think this has to be one of the top ones. But it's as I said to you previously, it's an onion with a lot of layers, and I'm glad we're going down this path. But I think over the coming months we'll be able to define a real roadmap so that council and this committee knows exactly what can be doable and what's achievable in a sustainable way, and that's what my goal is going to be.
Yeah, if I can just, I think you said it perfectly, and I just kind of want to just add one point, is that my work, what I've come to realize through my work here is that this can become a huge project and can grow and grow and grow and kind of get out of hand. Climate change has impacts on almost every area and every aspect. So really, like, if you can address it in multiple ways. So my recommendation is really focus, target, really just look at what your assets are, what you can influence and what you can change. That will be the best way to really have an impact on climate change, because ultimately it can be something that, you know, you can address it in almost every aspect or every area or every sector. So just if you can be targeted, I think that's the most valuable way to approach this.
Thank you. And Bob.
Yeah, but I was just wondering, what's the overall timeline for completion of this Grey County Climate Action Plan? It's a huge job. I was just wondering if there's a timeline in sight or what you're looking at.
Yeah, so we've had some delays because of COVID, but we're hoping to have a draft completed fairly soon here. We're just looking to present the strategies to our Grey County Climate Change Task Force at the end of January, and then get some feedback from them, and then present and include that into our draft. So we're hoping to have a draft in sometime in February, and then go out and do some consultation on that draft. And then take that to council in late March or early April. So once that draft is completed, it shouldn't take too long to have a finalized plan.
Okay.
So we're saying early spring for a final plan, ideally.
And that includes public consultation as well?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, excellent. John, back to you.
John, you're muted.
Well, I did lower my hand. I was really pleased to hear what our new CAO, Al Menendez, said. I mean, that speaks of experience and understanding of what we're actually doing. And I love his analogy of an onion. And so as I was listening to him, he sparked another question, and which is, have you yet done as part of your process of risks and vulnerabilities assessments as part of your work?
No, we haven't. It wasn't a requirement from FCM as part of our work. So we didn't do one, no. Because
these are typically done when a municipality is looking at comprehensive climate action, is they begin, and they get a lot of community input into this in terms of identifying where the risks and the vulnerabilities are. I really do expect those will vary across our 9 municipalities, but I do also think that there will be, as Al said, this umbrella that would apply to all of Grey County in terms of risks that are going to affect us all and vulnerabilities that are going to affect us all. So I guess that's something we can look to the future for.
Yeah, I think my thought around that is I think they're typically done in adaptation plans, so they're a requirement in the BARC analysis. So if you're doing an analysis of that sort, they usually require that to be conducted in part of that work. I know the City of Owen Sound did a risk and vulnerabilities analysis as part of their work with the when creating an adaptation plan. But that's something that I can kind of look into further, but that wasn't a requirement for us.
Okay. It doesn't look like we have any further questions, Hiba. Thank you so much for coming today and giving us that presentation. I wonder if that presentation can be, the PowerPoint can be forwarded to Brittany so we can include that in our minutes. It's always helpful to hear you speak and to give us an update on what's going on at the county level and to explore some ways that we can work together. So hopefully we can have you back again sometime down the road and try to work together a little more closely with the county. Thank you.
No, it's awesome. Thank you, guys.
Have a good day.
Thank you for all your work. It's a great presentation.
Sue, you've got your hand up.
Yes, just something that I wanted to comment on there. When we talk about the county all working together, I think part of our problem there is, and I know the county's great, like when we look at the community safety and well-being plan and how they took the lead there and were able to bring everybody together in the county, it really worked well. In this case, I think some of our municipalities got off to a head start over the rest of us. So trying to pull us all together at this point might be a little difficult, but I'm glad to hear Mr. Meneses say that the CAOs are all looking to work together. So I think that's important, but keep in mind, it may be hard to bring them together because every municipality has those differences and because everybody's at a different stage in their plan. So just some thoughts.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. I guess when I said working together in some ways, the remark to Hiba, she mentioned earlier on about even pulling our public works staff together and doing some training with them. Those are initiatives that I see as really important because as much as we may have buy-in from council and senior staff possibly, we also need the buy-in from all of our staff at every single level. And so rather than us all do training days individually for staff, I think that's a really efficient way of bringing everybody on board and up to speed together. And even though some municipalities may be further ahead than we are, I think it's an opportunity to learn from what they've done, where they've gone wrong, what we can do better. So yeah, and there have to be cost savings. That's the part that I find baffling to me, is that we all go off and hire the same kinds of people to do plans. And yeah, so I'm hoping there can be some outcomes in terms of working with the county at various levels. So yeah, if it's okay, I'm going to move us along. Oh, sorry, Al, you go ahead.
I was just going to add, I think it's really a culture shift. I mean, it's gonna, when we talk about operations as an example, it's everywhere. If you talk about finance and procurement, it's when you're buying cleaning supplies. Are they going to be green cleaning supplies and doing all of that? It's a cultural mind shift that has to happen in every area with every staff member. It's those frontline staff that are using chemicals and different things that will be able to tell us, let's do this, or have you thought about procuring this type of material now? So it's really something that has to permeate throughout the organization in every department. It doesn't matter what department it is, but it's something that will come over time as we develop this plan and we put specific policies together. You can even put, when you're looking at contractors and they have to have a certain level of emissions or certain green aspects to what they do in order to qualify to even bid on projects. So those are the types of things that we have to look at. They're all little steps in the process that together will make a big difference, and that's what we have to strive for.
Yeah, for sure, Al. And it's great to have you on board now, because I see you as being somewhat of a champion for this type of thing amongst staff and helping to facilitate that paradigm shift. We talk about using a climate change lens. It's important that that's coming from the top with staff. So yeah, exciting. Just looking at drawing us back to the agenda, I don't believe, Brittany, we have any correspondence that we need to consider or staff reports, and nothing for question period.
That is correct. Your next item is under unfinished business, being development of the work plan.
Okay. And this discussion could take a while. Can I just ask, for time, I'm struggling a little bit as the chair to know how to keep us on time and on track. If we look at meetings being an hour and a half, is that reasonable? Is 2 hours reasonable? I think some of us talked earlier on about meeting more often in these initial few days, and I think this is why. We have agendas that are moving along at a good pace, but in the first few meetings, I just find them to be really heavy. And so I don't know whether to let these meetings go on for 3 hours, or if we need to have more frequent meetings, as we wondered about in the beginning. So yeah, thoughts on that, because this next item is going to take a while to discuss, right? This work plan. And I also want to be really vigilant in terms of time management with our own staff, who are also very, very busy doing other things. So just thoughts on timelines, Anne.
I think meeting more frequently makes some sense. And I actually wonder whether the work plan should be an agenda item on its own, and that for today we pick off a few items that I think come out of the work plan that we need to do immediately, and just target those to address today, and then put the whole work plan as a full agenda item maybe 2 weeks from now, or whenever we choose, but fairly quickly.
That sounds reasonable to me. Al, what are your thoughts?
I would concur. I mean, I've got a meeting at 11:30, so if we are going to extend it, I can't stay much longer. But I'm a little bit concerned when we talk about work plans. Right now, my understanding is, from a staffing perspective, this is sitting with the clerk's department right now, and Brittany is great, and she's got tremendous resources that she does, but it isn't something that necessarily falls into what a regular clerk would do. And so I'm very cognizant and worried of the fact that we're going to develop a work plan that, as staff, we're not going to be able to deliver on. And so I would appreciate if we would have a specific agenda for the work plan in a couple of weeks, so we can at least sit down, really look at this, because, as I said, one of my principles is I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver, and I don't want to set this committee up with expectations that we're in Georgian Bluffs, we're going to do all these great things over the coming years, and then we don't deliver anything because I don't have the resources to get it done. So I'd rather take some time, develop a work plan collectively together that we can comfortably say, yes, we feel comfortable in delivering this, subject to council approval and the resources being assigned to it and the budget being assigned to it. rather than sort of doing this great wish list and then we fall flat on everything that we wanted to do. So that would be sort of my preference and my recommendation to the committee, is if we could defer the item of the work plan, come back in a couple of weeks, and then give it some additional consideration, and we will have had some time to really look into what we're looking at and the resources we have available to deliver on it.
Okay, so I think that makes sense, and I think I see heads nodding and people agreeing that we book a meeting in 2 weeks. And Al, just before you run off, so for me, what I don't want to do is lose a year. So if there are budget items we need to make a case for to council or to recommend to council, we're going to have to do that in the next month or so, I would think, as our treasurer prepares the budget. So I wonder if that's something that's kind of imminent, and if you have recommendations. I know that's one of the reasons we asked Brittany to ask here on Kinloss about the cost. So I would just flag that as sort of something that I know it's putting the cart before the horse a little bit, but if we don't, we're going to lose out on a whole year on this, which I don't think is ideal.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, I've already spoken to our treasurer, and if we're not at a position where we're going to be able to 100% quantify what it's going to take in 2021 to start putting some rubber to the road and get some traction on this, we will at least recommend to put a placeholder in there and get some funds approved. And then as we start moving down this path, we'll go to council and say, out of X that was approved, we're now going to use Y to start this, and we're going to use Z to do this, so that council and this committee will be apprised of it all. But I'm worried that we're at the process now where we're getting close to putting a budget together on draft form, and we don't have this solidified yet in terms of dollars and cents. And I think it's important enough that at least we want to put something in front of council during budget consideration time, so that it allows council at least to prioritize. And if indeed climate action is one of the top priorities, then council will be able to assign some funding to that and some resources to make something happen with climate change. So that's my goal, and there will be something in the budget submission for council's consideration as it relates to climate.
Excellent. I'm so relieved to hear that. Sue.
I was just going to make a motion that we defer development of a work plan to a specific agenda in, say, a week or 2 weeks. So if I could just put that motion on the floor.
Excellent. Do we have a seconder for that motion to defer? Danuta, all in favor? And that carries. Thank you, Sue. Thank you for making this an official procedure. I appreciate that.
I was just going to recommend for the minutes that although the deputy mayor said 1 or 2 weeks, that maybe the minutes just reflect 2 weeks.
Sounds good.
Just to give us a little bit of extra time.
Perfect. Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think John maybe had his hand up next. Yes.
Yeah, just a quick question about on December 4th, I gave a presentation to this group about like an introduction to what climate planning was, and there was the suggestion or idea that I would make that presentation to council. Is that still on the agenda, and is doing it earlier better than doing it later?
So I'm just going to jump in here. That was going to be my next question, because if we're asking council to commit to funds for 2021, I suspect there's some work to be done to bring people a little forward so that we're all on the same page where climate action is concerned. So I would support that 100%, requesting that go on an agenda sooner rather than later. Brittany.
So at our last committee meeting, we did kind of briefly discuss this as well. We were aiming for a day in January, which I think we can still make. We are too late for January 13th as the agenda is finalized as of today. We can aim for January 20th or the following meeting being February 10th. As Al has mentioned, budget discussions are up and coming. If we met or if we were able to get the presentation on either of those agendas, that would give us plenty of time to still make the appropriate considerations for the budget.
John, does either of those dates work for you since you'd be, I believe, doing the presentation, the 20th?
That would be better for me because by the end of the month, my brother and I, we plan to head north to cut wood for a few weeks. So I will have internet access up there, but it's marginal because it comes in on a satellite and it's a very remote northern area. So the 20th would work better for me. Okay. So do we need a motion for that, Brittany, or is that just something that we can?
I will put you on the schedule for January 20th.
Thank you. Excellent. That is super. That knocks off a couple of things, I think, on our work plan already. Is there anything else from that work plan that we should be discussing now that needs to be pulled out and is fairly imminent, Brittany?
Thank you. I wanted to give you a brief update regarding my discussions with Huron-Kinloss, as you did direct me to have those discussions. I reached out to their Director of Community Services, who has been spearheading the planning on in their municipality. So as a little bit of a background with Huron-Kinloss, they are quite similar to Georgian Bluffs, both in size and layout, in that the majority of their development does happen along the shoreline with small settlement areas there throughout. So they are a great comparator for us to be looking for direction from. And I will say that Hiba's presentation does touch a lot on what Mike, being the Director of Community Services with Huron-Kinloss, and myself spoke about. So Huron-Kinloss did hire a consultant through ICLEI Canada that has walked them through a 5-stage process in developing a work plan as well as implementing the strategies identified therein. The town or the municipality of Huron-Kinloss did spend approximately $150,000 over the course of 2 years, with some of that being covered by grant funding as well. So he did caution that it is a large undertaking, which we understand, I think, as a committee, both in a financial aspect and a workload aspect. So I have had those discussions with our CAO as well. And we are hopeful that we can continue to collaborate with the county to assist in mitigating those costs as well as that workload. So I just wanted to provide that update for your information.
Thank you, Brittany. That is helpful information. It's that's more than I anticipated it costing. Sue.
Thank you. Brittany, do you know if in that 150,000, did that include a staff position to actually oversee the whole plan, or was that just cost of consultant and such?
Thank you. They did onboard a summer student, so that cost was involved in that as well, but there was no onboarding of a specific full-time dedicated staff member. That was strictly working with the consultants and working through local colleges to facilitate a student.
Al.
Thank you. That's what I was going to mention as well. I know in the past what we've done is we've leveraged a lot of college students who are in environmental studies to come in and basically a co-op position or sort of an internship. The municipality doesn't pay anything for the intern. They get great practical working experience, which is great for their resume, and they're able to do a lot of work. And, you know, it's funny, I always used to say to the students that would come in that they were so anxious to come in and learn from us, but we really learn a lot from them, a lot more than what they learn from us, because they come in with all these great ideas and different things. And I just, as Jennifer's on the line here as well, we've been communicating back and forth. She's in the process of trying to procure a couple of, or three Ryerson students to help in the planning aspect, and we're going to look to see whether there's someone there with some environmental passions or some climate passion that maybe we can utilize as well as part of that onboarding, and try to tackle some more additional things that are on our work plan. So it's part of sort of that necessary time that we're going to take up front to put a proper roadmap together. But there's some resources and some different options. But as I said, this is a commitment that is going to take some money, and it's going to take some resources if we're going to be successful at it. There's no two ways about it. I don't know of how else. I've never seen anyone do it without it costing a penny. But as I said, it likely costs you more if you don't do anything than if you do something. And so that's the business case we need to put forward so that our residents and our councillors can all understand that it's the right thing to do. It's just a matter of now doing it fiscally responsibly and getting the best return on that investment that we can possibly do. And that's what we have to put together in terms of our plan to move this forward.
Thank you. Anne.
So Al, I would really like you to do exactly what you just said as a preamble to John's presentation on the 20th. Because I think they go hand in hand. Yeah, it's going to cost us money to do it, but it's going to cost us more money not to do it.
Sure. John, if you've got a presentation that you're going to make, if you can send that to me, and then maybe we will coordinate. And I am happy to do sort of some introductory remarks for sure.
Great idea.
Yeah, sure. I sent a recorded version of it to Brittany.
Okay.
Do you have that, Brittany? Now I would prefer to do a live one on the 20th, but that, if you look at that, you'll see the slides and you know what I talked about, and I basically would repeat that. But if you had any input, I would gladly like to hear that and would revise that accordingly.
Okay, sure. I'll connect with Brittany then, and we'll take a look, and we'll reach out to you afterwards.
That sounds like a good plan. Just one other thing I wonder if we need to talk about. We had discussed committee members reaching out individually and doing one-on-one phone calls with to kind of prep them for what's coming along in terms of the committee work and climate action in general. Is that something that we feel we still need to do, or do we think the presentation on January 20th by John and Al is going to suffice? Thoughts on that? I'm curious to hear what you think, Sue, because you have a pretty good handle on our other council members. Do you think, do you feel like they're going to need a little bit of prep work prior to the presentation?
I don't think so, Madam Chair. I think I would sooner they get the professional presentation than, speaking personally, that I phone and talk to them about something while I'm working to get up to speed on this, I'd hate to put them off by saying the wrong thing. So I think I'd sooner have them hear the professional presentations and then come back and ask us questions.
And I agree. I think that's sometimes when you start calling people one-on-one, it feels like it's a bit awkward, and it might come across as though we're trying to convince them or create a certain mindset before the council meeting, which is something we generally try to avoid. Brittany, you have your hand up. I can't see you any longer, but
now can you see me?
No, I can't. Maybe other people can. I can't see Luke or John either, so.
Something just happened and the whole screen glitched, so it may be the universe telling us this meeting has gone too long. I'm not sure.
Subtle, but not so subtle, Brittany.
I just wanted to comment that procedurally it would make the most sense if the delegated council members on this committee provide regular updates in a formal council or committee of the whole meeting, rather than reaching out to individual council members to have those discussions. I would prefer that happen in an open council meeting.
Yeah, I agree. And our Mayor Burley phoned me this morning and asked that I provide an update at the council meeting next Wednesday. So I must remember to add that as an agenda item, Brittany, and bring council up to date on where we are at with this committee. So that will, I think, help prep them, and I'll let them know at that time that there's a presentation coming forward on the 20th. So, Al.
Sorry, I have to leave. I've got another meeting that I've got to attend to that I'd pre-committed. So thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate your passion for this, and we're going to move this forward, this agenda, I promise. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks for coming, Al.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we can we move beyond development of the work plan, since we're going to address that in a couple of weeks. We had a couple of new business items. One is Sue's article. I'm going to recommend that be deferred if possible too, just in the interest of time. Anne?
Could I just comment, though, that I really liked Al and the approach to Ryerson, but I also wondered about approaching the three authors of that article to see whether there would be any students that would be interested in doing an internship or helping out in this. I'm aware that the University of Guelph draws a lot of students from Grey and Bruce County, so a lot of local folks go there, and it might be a really nice way of getting a local connection into our work. Now, I guess, 2 weeks away is not that long. We could wait. Yeah.
I mean, I like that suggestion as well. Yeah. Other comments regarding that, Brittany?
Thank you. And, just again, coming from conversations that I've had both with our CAO as well as representatives from the county, it would be my preference that we kind of hold off on reaching out to local schools and colleges just yet, because we do want to evaluate what grant programming we can use and how that grant programming can be applied to which universities, if it's only eligible for example, Georgian College, and we have to pull from that specific source. So I think we need a little bit more time to evaluate our options prior to reaching out to people, but it definitely is our intention to do so sooner rather than later.
Excellent. Thank you. Sue, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I totally agree with getting the students from university or college. I think that's an awesome idea. The county uses that all the time, and it's a bonus for them. It's a bonus for us. So that's a great idea. Just, I'm in agreement with deferring on the vision statement because that takes a bit of time, but just wondering if everybody could think about that. And where I'm coming from it is part of yesterday's meeting with the county was some questions by HIBA wanting to know, does the vision statement that the county has put forward for climate change align with the Grey County strategic vision, and does it align with the municipal strategic vision? And my question was, should we then also have a vision statement made for our climate change group committee? So I have kind of those questions, and the 3 vision statements prepared here or in a document just so I can read it in front of me to compare. I don't mind sharing that with everyone, just if everyone could give some thought to that before the next meeting as to what we would create as a vision statement for this group. So just my thoughts and comments there. Thank you.
Right. So sorry, Sue, did you want to provide that at this point in time, or are we going to address this in a subsequent meeting? You said you had them in writing.
Sorry, I inadvertently shut off the speaker, so I didn't hear everything you said, and I was thinking you were muted, but I shut off my speaker instead of muting myself. So I didn't hear all of what you said, Kathy.
No, that's okay. I guess I agree that I think our committee does need to have, or maybe not the committee, but our, I would say that our climate action plan should have a vision and a mission statement. And I wonder if that can come a little later, but you're right, it needs to align with our strategic plan vision and mission. And I don't think that's going to be difficult because they're fairly broad and they talk about things like quality of life and creating opportunity. So I think whatever we develop in the future in terms of a vision and mission statement, I don't think we'll have any trouble aligning them with what we currently have. I guess what I was wanting to clarify is, are you looking for a vision statement for this committee or a vision statement for our climate action plan?
For our plan, sorry, I probably said committee, I meant for the plan. I see Brittany has her hand up. Brittany, I'm wondering if you want me to send this through you so that you could send it out to everybody?
So what I was going to suggest, if you can circulate it, I know we need to have everyone have a look at this document so we can come to the next meeting prepared when we're discussing the work plan. So if you can send it to, I'm okay with you sending it to all of our committee members just to get the juices flowing, CC myself, and that way I can include it in our next agenda as well so it doesn't fall off the radar.
That sounds perfect. Sorry, Anne, go ahead. Yep.
Just wanted to let you know that the Georgian Bluffs Climate Action Community Committee does have a vision and mission statement, and I wondered whether it would be worth circulating that as well. So if yes, I can do that.
Yeah, that would be excellent, for sure. Yeah, we want all the pieces of the puzzle to fit together in sort of a cohesive and meaningful manner. So that is something that we can take a look at and think about for maybe not the meeting on January 20th, perhaps when we're talking about our work plan, but perhaps at the meeting following that. So if I can move us along here, I think that takes care of new business. Notice of motion, I don't believe there are any. No, and there's no closed session. So can we set a date for the next meeting now, or do we prefer a Google poll for that? Brittany, what do you think works best?
Sorry, just bear with me here. I'm looking at our council schedule just to, I know that you guys like Friday mornings at 10 a.m. so we can stick with that if that's great for everyone. So in development, I know we want to make 2 separate meetings. So are we looking at scheduling both the next regular meeting of the committee as well as the special meeting to consider strictly the draft plan? Are we looking to schedule both of those at this time?
I would recommend we do.
Okay. So our motion says that we are to defer the plan by 2 weeks. If we take that in a literal sense, that brings us to January 22nd. That is a Friday, and we could schedule that at 10 a.m. At this time, we have no conflicting meetings.
That sounds good to me. How do the rest of the folks feel about that? Is that a date that generally works? I know that we're not always going to hit everybody, but yes.
I see thumbs. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so the 22nd for our meeting to discuss the work plan specifically, and then maybe a couple of weeks after that, Brittany, for another regular meeting.
And that would bring us to February 5th, and we would do that again for 10 a.m. unless anyone has any conflicts.
That works for me. I see thumbs up. I'm still not seeing, I'm seeing some participants, but not all. So if that doesn't work, if you could maybe speak up.
I see thumbs all around.
Okay.
Cassie.
Perfect.
Cassie,
all right. Sorry. So there we go. We have that. Did you say February 5th?
So yes, so that would bring us to January 22nd at 10 a.m. as well as February 5th at 10 a.m. You will all receive invitations for your calendars.
Perfect. Okay, before we sign off and adjourn, I wonder if it's okay with everyone that I try to keep the meeting to an hour and a half. Is that reasonable? I feel like our meetings are going 2 hours, sometimes a little bit more, but if we can aim for an hour and a half, does that sound reasonable to everyone? Yeah. Perfect. I think it'll get easier as we get going along. We're all keen. We have lots of good ideas. And what I love about this committee is that they're very hands-on. Everyone seems to be very hands-on, and we are getting things done. And that is refreshing and terrific, I think. So thank you, everyone. Thanks to the staff that attend and commit their time. And if it's okay, I would just ask that we call for adjournment. Is everyone in favor? Perfect. We'll adjourn and we'll see everyone again in a couple of weeks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah,
Have a
thank
good
you. Very
weekend.
good.
Have a good afternoon, everyone.